Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 205. This episode is dedicated in honor of Breina Bas Chana. Please bear in mind that this program is a free program. A lot of work goes into it. So we rely on community sponsorship to be able to continue and do all this work. So I invite you to partner with us in helping support these programs by going to meaningfullife.com/sponsorship. And I appreciate very much, in the name of myself, in the name of our team, in the name of all the people that benefit from this program. So this program is dedicated in honor of Breina Bas Chana, and being that we are now in the week of Parshas Vayikra, and this coming Shabbos, we'll read the Parsha Vayikra, we'll also read Parshas Chodesh, when it's Rosh, and it's also Rosh Chodesh Nissan. So it has many different qualities, in addition to some significant dates that are also in the middle of this week, namely the 25th of Adar, the birthday of the Rebbe, Mushke, and the 27th of Adar, a very different note, the sad day when in Tafshin Nun Beis, 26 years ago, the Rebbe had a stroke. So we'll talk about that as well. Let's start with Parsha Vayikra and go into Rosh Chodesh Nissan and Parshas Chodesh. So of course, Vayikra is the beginning of the third book of the Torah. We just finished Vayikra Pekudei, book 2, the book of Exodus, the book of Shemos, and indeed, in chronological order, as last book concludes, that's how we begin this week. What is the conclusion last week? We read the last 4 chapters. Actually, we were reading about the command and then the actual building of the sanctuary, of the Mishkan. In last week's Parsha Pekudei, we talk about exactly what happened, and on Rosh Chodesh Nissan was when they concluded and the Mishkan began, the opening of the Mishkan, Rosh Chodesh Nissan. Then from end of Pekudei, what is the last pasuk in last week's chapter? It says that Moshe could not enter the Oil Moed because the Onon Hashem, the cloud of glory, the God's divine cloud, covered the Mishkan, and Moshe lo yochel Moshe to enter. Then comes this week's parsha begins, Vayikra al Moshe. Hashem called to Moshe. So the Likutei Torah of the Alter Rebbe on this parsha, he touches upon this and discusses this at length in a very fascinating way. Here you have a real Chassidus applied element that can be applied to each one of us, and he actually applies it himself, the Alter Rebbe, in a very specific way. He asks a few questions. He says, first of all, why does it say Vayikra al Moshe? You're missing the name. Vayikra al Moshe means called to Moshe. Doesn't say Hashem. Doesn't say any name. Doesn't say Vayikra Hashem al Moshe. It says Vayikra al Moshe. Doesn't say Mihu Akeda, who is the caller. Secondly, the Aleph in Vayikra is a small Aleph. Vayikra concludes with an Aleph, a letter. It's an Aleph Ze'era, which means a small Aleph in the Sefer Torah. And then Alter Rebbe explains that this pasuk follows what happened in the last chapter, as I just mentioned. Why was Moshe not able to enter the Mishkan? Because the Gilui of Elokus, the divine revelation, was so intense that it was impossible for a human being to be able to enter there because of the intensity. As he calls it, Yoshas Cheshach Sisrei, God considers darkness his hiding place. Why? Because Elokus of the divine, the essence of the divine, is beyond any form of revelation. And that's what was the situation. The cloud represents Yoshas Cheshach Sisrei. Think of a cloud that covers the whole area, and no one could enter. Vayikra al Moshe was a special call that came from the Atzem. If it would have come from Hashem, from the name God, or from the name Elohim, or from any other name, that's already not entering that place where Moshe cannot enter. So you needed a call from a Hamshacha, a type of a Susa D'Leil that God called Moshe Rabbeinu from the Etzem. That's why it doesn't say a name, Vayikra al Moshe. The Etzem itself, that's higher than any form of name, called Moshe, and through Moshe's bittul, which is the Aleph Ze'era, the small Aleph represents the bittul. Through that bittul, he was able to enter into the place that a moment before he was unable to enter. So basically, we're talking about the first entry into the Mishkan where the God is resting on this earth in the Mishkan, in the sanctuary, and Moshe Rabbeinu enters there on Rosh Chodesh Nissan, and the rest of Vayikra, will basically be the laws that we learn all about what was said on Rosh Chodesh Nissan the first day when the Mishkan was open for business, so to speak, when Moshe first entered. Then we'd have the Chanukas HaMishkan until Vayhi Bayem Hashmini in 2 chapters from now. On the 8th day, which is Rosh Chodesh Nissan, actually, that's when, after the education and the training of the Kohanim, that's when they will begin their service. But Moshe began listening and hearing God's laws already before that. So essentially what we have here is Vayikra al Moshe coming from the highest levels, opening up a door to a human being able to, in this case Moshe, being able to connect not just to the Giluim and revelations of the divine, but to the essence itself. And requires the bitl. The Alter Rebbe continues and says, Atera initzchis. Teira is eternal. And you have to say that this message is not just one that happened back then, but it's one that's happening right now. Because each of us has a Moshe within us. Each of us, therefore, has the capacity to have the bittul, the humility that Moshe Rabbeinu had, that allows us to be called and summoned by Vayikra, by the highest levels of the divine, to enter a place where a human being naturally cannot enter on his own. And that's through Limudat Torah. When a person learns Torah's Moshe, through Torah's Moshe, he's able to connect to the divine that's higher than what a human being can reach on its own. And he elaborates the details of it. But applying it to our personal lives, to translate it into our personal lives, let's just talk an example from relationships with each other. When two people are friends, how deep is their relationship? How deep can they connect with each other? So there's shallow and superficial relationships where two people, either they're doing business together or it's a casual relationship. So they connect on a certain level. A deeper connection is you connect intellectually, you can connect emotionally. Let's start from the bottom up. You can connect on a nefesh level, which is basically physically. What does that mean? There's a business transaction or just a friendly chat. You can connect on a more emotional level, ruach, which is more emotional connection. There's a friendship, there's affection. Obviously, this is all more intense when it comes to spouses. And then there's connecting on an intellectual level. But still, you cannot call that the etzem of the person's connecting with the etzem of the other person. You say, yes, it's more than just superficial, because there is some commonality, there's some camaraderie, a certain kinship, kindred spirits, but the question is how deep it goes. We know that a human being, however, has more than just action, basically biological and emotional and cognitive faculties. We also have the superconscious, which I specifically use that word, not unconscious or subconscious, because in Chassidus, superconscious, higher than conscious, from which the consciousness derived. Sub and un seems to be like, the sub is like a basement, it's like beneath the consciousness. Here it is indeed beneath, but it really precedes it. So superconsciousness, and when people connect on a deeper level, there they can start connecting even in places that we would call beyond the regular revelatory faculties. Deep connections, when you say nafshi kshuri benafshi, when two people really bond, they bond more than just that they have intellectual interests and emotional interests and physical interests, that material interests that they have in common, but they start connecting on a soul level. And that can go all the way to the etzem of the neshama, whether it's soulmates or even very deep friends, where you have that type of connection that goes all the way to the essence. I'm just trying to give an example of something which would be more than just on a basic level. The same thing is in our relationship with the divine. You could have a relationship on a more basic level. God, for example, provides. He provides us with life, with health, with parnasa, with livelihood, with food, with sustenance, and so on. And your relationship is you thank Him, and therefore you serve Him, and you comply to the request that God makes of us. That's a relationship what we would call mamala kalam. You can have a deeper relationship with Kabbalah Seil, even to the point of Mesiris Nefesh. What is that? That more than just a logical and rational relationship, that you connect, even more than just the basic. However, it's still not necessarily an etzem level. Etzem level is a connection that goes beyond any form of expression or definition. It's a fundamental core connection, like we have a parent to a child, or a child to a parent. An ava atzmis, we call it. What's an ava atzmis? It's not bound by any particular definition, and it's not conditional by any particular need. It connects fundamentally at the core level. So in our relationship with the divine, as in our relationship with each other through the neshamas, The expectation is to reach not just a place of revelation, but even a place, Vayikra, O Moshe, a place with Vayikra, without a name, without even a name, Havaya. And that allows us to then enter places that on its own would be considered an intimate, or place that is beyond revelation. It's dark, but it's a darkness that's beyond revelation, but we can connect and even express the inexpressible. It goes to show how deep a person can actually reach in connecting with another. The Rebbe speaks about this also with Avos Yisrael. There's Avos Yisrael, there's Achdus Yisrael, a unity that connects not just because we're all part of one organism, as the Yerushalmi says, but it's because we have a fundamental connection on a soul level to Av Echas L'Kulona, that in the source we're all bound as one. And that's a oneness that's more deeper than just a harmony of amidst diversity. So in our personal lives, really, it comes down to how deep we can reach. So Vayikra is a new chapter in Torah, begins a new chapter in our lives, in the journey. Torah Nitzchi is the eternity of Torah. The journey now is after everything we've learned before, which is the base. Baresh is basically the Sefer of the Avos, which, as Chassidus explains, is aligning ourselves with the source of creation, with Chodesh HaNivroim, as best as we can be, a human being can be, without a call from above. So the Avos were able to reach, align the universe to the way the Maker, the way the Creator wanted it to be. By Matan Torah was a Ir Chodesh. After Yetzias Mitzrayim, Shmei, Sefer Shmei, leading to Matan Torah, was a new revelation that the Avos did not have. Shmi Havaya le'nadaiti lehem. They did not have Shem Havaya. What did that accomplish? That now you can transform the material world and turn it into a sacred space. Something that before there was exalted that did not allow that. The heavens were heavens, that which was above remained above, that which was below. You could not turn matter into energy, matter into spirit. And now, after Matan Torah, a Ner Chodesh, but that came from above. Vayered Hashem, God came down, and Moshe went up. So there's a certain new experience, which would ultimately be the beginning of what will come when the Geula of Moshiach comes. But the Matan Torah was still a place that that was the mandate was given, it still needed to be consummated, and it was consummated by the Mishkan. When Moshe built a Mishkan, a physical abode, made of gold, silver, and copper, Vayikra Truma, and all the other materials that he gathered from the Jews, material things, and built a physical temple, that's when Matan Torah came to Rosh, because then we really had a physical space on earth that became V'shachanti b'seichem, a place for the God to reside. That was not done until that point. The Avos didn't do that, and even by Matan Torah it didn't happen. Matan Torah, once they left Mount Sinai, the Sinai was once, it still remained a mundane place. Here, finally, Kedusha began to permeate existence, which of course would even intensify with the buildings of the temple, Temple 1, Temple 2, and permanently so through all the work that we did through the thousands of years, and the third Beis HaMikdash with Moshiach's coming. So it's all a process. So what does the Mishkan do? The Mishkan brings that type of revelation down below. But as long as the Mishkan has such a revelation, Moshe can't enter. That's why you need a Vayikra, a call. That call brought Amnu Amshocha Atzmis even higher than Havaya by Matan Torah. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. The Anoichi, which is Leis Ramez, V'lei B'shumeis, Lei B'shum Kates. Anoichi says is not hinted to even in a letter or in any even in a line. Even in a Kates is the point at the top of a Yud even. Just a point, nothing. It doesn't have any place to express, and even that non-expression, which of Etzem, can now become part of our lives. That means that we're able to reach places that are far beyond the structure of our existence, even beyond Sevav Kalam and even the transcendence, transcending even transcendence, and bringing that down in the Mishkan, because that's what Moshe was in El May. That's where he heard the voice, and that's where God spoke with him. And each of us achieves more obviously in a Zohar Ampin way, in a far lesser way, but in a diminished way, but a microcosm of that because of the Moshe, due to the merit of the Moshe within each of us. And in practical language, it simply means that we are not just creatures of this world that can only accomplish things that our mind and our hearts set our mind and our heart to. We can also reach places of transcendence, but we can also reach places that are even deeper than that. That means the possibilities are unlimited. You can reach unlimited possibilities. So no matter what you're going through in life, whether it's a difficulty, even when it's not difficult, it's beyond the sky is the limit, and you can turn that into something that is transformed into your personal life. So with the power that gives us, Vayikra gives you, is that it calls us and enables, it's like a calling, a call to each one of us, that to your soul, to your being, are you fulfilling your mission in this world? And the mission is not just to survive, the mission is not just to live up to the fact that you're sustained and you are healthy and all the blessings that come to our lives, but it's to reach places that are beyond even human. The ability for a human being to go beyond the human, to do what is divine, and all the way to the deepest levels of the divine, and turn that into something that's a viable tool that transforms our physical lives in this world. That just gives a whole another take on what a human being is capable of and what we are ultimately sent to do, to turn this world into a dir b'tachtenim, a mishkan, not just in one area, but the whole world becomes a divine home. Rosh Chodesh Nissan, as I just explained, is connected. I know that may be confusing because I mentioned Vayikra is Rosh Chodesh. It's not Rosh Chodesh, of course, is the day when the Mashmini, when they're not L'Eser HaTorahs, but Rosh Chodesh is connected to that because it's beginning of the process that led to Rosh Chodesh Nissan. So of course this Shabbos, all this is emphasized even more so. Rosh Chodesh Nissan is HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, the new moon, Davar Chodesh, again, newness, Chidush. HaChodesh comes from the word newness. The sun is a consistent flow and more powerful in revelation. But the Levana reaches, the Levana is like the Aleph Ze'era, the small Aleph, it's Moed HaKotan. It's the small luminary. Yaakov hu HaKotan, David hu HaKotan. The smallness, but that smallness, like the small letter Aleph, is the keli, is the container to reach the greatest expanses. Because when you are filled with Giluyim, you really can't be a container to the Etzem. So Rosh Chodesh Nissan, which is the month, the new year of all months, Chodesh Hazeh Lachem, Yeh Lachem Reish Chadashim, Chodshei Hashanah, to all the months of the year, is when Moshe was standing in Mitzrayim and Hashem showed him, this is the new moon that you shall bless every month, and this is Shehem Hasidin Lis Chadesh Kamesa. The Jewish people are compared to, they too will experience renewal, first coming out of Egypt, a new nation, that dafka through the Helam and the darkness, Yashash Cheshach Sisrei in the negative sense, led them to become a completely new people, that led them to Sinai, that led them to build a Mishkan. So all of this translates in our personal lives an element of renewal. The life is not just more of the same. It's not like some cynics say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. There's a constant renewal, constant change, and more importantly, the ability to get to places that are beyond anything. So no person should ever feel they're a victim of circumstances or even a product of circumstances. We are not. We have the capacity to reach the deepest and highest levels. So whatever situation you're in right now, think of it, you have now the ability for a complete renewal, starting with this period in time, Vayikra, the Sefer Vayikra, which corresponds this year with Rosh Chodesh Nissan. Let's share a few words about the 2 days this week, even though they're very antithetical. On one hand, 25th of Adar, a birthday of none less than the Rebbetzin Chaimushka. Rebbetzin Chaimushka, and the birthday, and what did the Rebbe do in honor of her birthday? He gave her the greatest birthday gift of all, that year, Tavshim Mem Ches, which is 30 years ago. This week, when was after Chav Bei Shvat, the passing of the Rebbetzin on Chav Bei Shvat, so literally a month later, Chav Bei Adar, her birthday, the Rebbe gave the Rebbetzin the gift of making birthdays, something that every person should embrace as a special day, even though it was always known to be a special day, but it was done more discreetly and quietly. The Rebbe already began talking about birthdays before, obviously 30 years ago, but 30 years ago the Rebbe announced it as a campaign and with directives that he spoke about. Chafei Adar then Pesach and Achron Shal Pesach came out already published, how we should celebrate our birthdays through making fabrengens, hachlatas tevis, adding and learning, obviously the Tehillim we say, and davening, mils chasadim, all the elements that a birthday is the day that God puts you on this earth. The beginning of your Faranenkite, the Rebbe says. Or as I like to phrase it in English, birth is God saying, you matter. Birth is God saying, I need you in this world. You are now coming to this world to fulfill a mission that you and only you can accomplish. And the Rebbe's personal birthday became the launch pad that the Rebbe launched this mitzvah of V'yemaledes for all of us. So obviously something, practical thing we all can embrace, but interestingly as well, Chafei Adar is actually the birthday of the world as well. There are two opinions, Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yeshua. When was the world created? B'chafei Elul or b'chafei Adar, which would mean that Chafei Adar would be the first day, and then Rosh Chodesh Nissan would be the creation of Adam and Chava, the sixth day of creation, or b'chafei El, and then Rosh Hashanah, the Aleph Tishrei, the first of Tishrei, is the creation of Adam and Chava. So we know we honor Rosh Hashanah, but we also honor Rosh Chodesh Nissan. As a matter of fact, in Teisvis and Kisvei Arizal, the Rebbe explains it's not really a machlekes. Because one is the creation of the worlds in machshava, in God's thought, and one is creation and actual creation. It's like an architect first has a vision and a plan, and then he implements it. So the truth is they're both Rosh Hashanahs. The Rosh Hashanah, of course, of Maisa is in Tishrei. But Chafei Adar also has an element of Rosh Hashanah to it, which is a birthday, the birthday of the world, the universe, and of course leading to the birthday of each human being, because that's when we honor Zeh Yom Tchilas Masecha, because the human being is the crown jewel of creation. So it all rounds out. So as far as birthdays, basically, in other words, not just honoring birthdays, but honoring our lives, the dignity and indispensability and the majesty of your unique and glorious journey. With all the ups and downs and all the twists and turns, it's a journey that was chosen for you, with you, of course, playing a key role, meaning you and I and each one of us, of using the resources we were blessed with and following the divine providence we were given to make sure to make the right choices, that all that be used in the most positive and most powerful way. Whether it's positive experiences, obviously, but even experiences that may appear negative should also be transformed and seen as stepping stones to creating a greater light in this world and building a mishkan. A mishkan, shchanti b'seichem b'seich kol echad v'achas. Within each one of us, that our beings, our bodies, our beings, our lives become a sanctuary, a divine sanctuary. And doing our best to create the same in our homes, as much as possible, to turn that into a divine dwelling. Of course, when we all do this collectively, will come the Geula, and the entire world will radiate with that type of dira b'tachtenim, a beautiful home and dwelling place for the divine in a permanent way, where the etzem can feel, when at home, you feel your whole being is comfortable. In the street, or in business, or at work, it's not all of you. You have to put on different masks, you have to adjust, you have your defenses up. At home, as Chassidus explains, a person is completely comfortable. That's what a healthy home is supposed to be like. And the same thing for the divine, that etzem, atzmos, the God, in full glory can feel completely comfortable, does not have to conceal himself, does not have to in any way limit himself, because it's completely a place that's been completely prepared, that he can come and not just be a guest, but a permanent fixture in existence. So even though God is here, but on our terms, in our physical world, and from our perspective, to also create that type of environment. Now we have Chav Zayin Adar, which, as I said, is antithetical. Chav Zayin Adar doesn't seem to have any positive element to it. On that night, Monday night, the Rebbe coming back, the oil had a stroke, which caused Begashmi, the Rebbe, not to speak to us till now, and not to be able to use his right hand, and all the limitations that it caused the whole Helen Behester. And yet we were trained to understand that even when it's Yoshes Cheshach Sisrei, when it's complete darkness, and even complete silence, there cannot be that it's complete negative. There has to be something that we take out of that. So there's the famous Sikha that Rebbe spoke weeks before, Chav Zayin, another 6 weeks before, on Beis, on Gimel Shvat, where he spoke about a stroke, spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu, spoke about the Frierdiker Rebbe being higher than speech, yet it's still a concealment. Adibur hoye begolus, the Rebbe brought then from the Zohar. The dibur was in golus. Terrible. But it's our role at times like that to become the mouthpiece, like Aaron. That Aaron was the mouthpiece to repeat what we heard from the Rebbe, to become channels and expressors of the teachings and the directives that we heard from the Rebbe. So of course we want the Rebbe to speak himself, but for whatever reason the plan is, it has to be some aveda b'kayach hatzmei, something coming from us. So though I am not going to even begin to try to explain Chav Zayin Adar, because I have no clue God's deeper and mysterious plans, but to say we lay down and die, God forbid, absolutely not. That's not how we were trained. We were taught no matter what the situation is, we have to figure out not why it happened, but what we do about it. And what we do about it is we intensify, because now we have to kavyachol, so to speak, supplement those words that we're not hearing coming straight from the Rebbe's mouth. By doing what? By being the mouthpieces, being the arms and legs, being the channels, being the mishkan. Like an achsanya, that the Mishkan to carry these messages and these directives to every person we meet, and in a language that is relevant and palatable and acceptable in ways that people can actually appreciate, which is very much the essence of why we do this. MyLife Chassidus Applied. It's exactly that, to take the Chassidus of the Rebbeim, specifically through the lens of the Rebbe, and turn it into a viable and a relevant and a living and dynamic and exciting blueprint, skills of dealing with every issue we have in our lives. So, with that, let me speak a little about the contest. The contest now has gone through tier 1 of judging, which means all the papers and all the essays have been looked at by the judges, and they have now turned the top 50 or 60 essays are being selected, and that will go through now a second tier, a second judging process, which will determine the top winners. So stay tuned. And again, I will commend you all and thank you so much for participating in it. It's all very exciting. I heard from a number of judges how they were enjoying reading and seeing the effort that people really invested in turning Chassidus into a solution and a response to contemporary challenges and issues. So, short note about that. I might as well use this opportunity to also give you the ability to go to meaningfullife.com/mylife, where you can find the place where you can submit any question, comment, and completely anonymously, as well as find all the archives of the previous 204 episodes. They're all time-stamped in the YouTube part. So you have to click on the video on the YouTube when it says YouTube, and there you'll find them all time-stamped, which means you can go straight to the subject you're interested in. You can also search, obviously, by subject. You can also read there the 3 years of essays that were already submitted in the past 3 years. So it's a full, rich resource for each one of you to use. And again, I say it's all free, but we really appreciate if you can be partner with us in sponsoring at any level and helping us continue to make this grow, make it expand its reach and its impact. With that, let us go to some questions. And very apropos, the first question we're going to deal with is, before I go to the questions, I always forget this, let me give you some cross-referencing to previous episodes. Firstly, about Parshas Vayikra and Chodesh Nissan, I refer you to episode 60 and 156. This again is these topics that were already addressed, and now with so many episodes, obviously there's plenty of cross-referencing. And regarding the 25th of Adar and the 27th of Adar, I refer you to episode 7 and 155. Good. Now let's go to the first question. That is a new question that came in. What will the world look like when Moshiach comes? And here's how the writer phrases it. We will see Hashem when Moshiach comes. Or will we see Hashem when Moshiach comes? Or only His holiness and glory? Thank you. So you open up at chapter 36 in Tanya, and he speaks about this very directly. He speaks exactly what I was discussing earlier about Matan Torah, Kfar Hoya Le'elamin, that there was already Ata Hares Ladas, a revelation at Matan Torah, but it was me'ain, only a taste of what will be when Mashiach comes, and will be in a permanent level and on a higher level. And he brings there, V'nigla Kved Hashem v'ro kol basar yachdav. The glory of God, Kved Hashem, will be revealed, and all flesh will see it. He brings ayin ba'ayin yiro, eye to eye. V'lo yikana feid merecha. There will no longer be any garment that will conceal. V'hoye necha royes es merecha. You will see merech. You will see your master. The Rebbe brings from his father, from the Rebbe's, Rabbi Levi Yitzchok's Ha'aris on Tanya, explains the different reasons for the different psukim. But the second half of Tanya, Perek Lamed Vav, talks about it, brings quite a number of verses, and there are more in Tanakh, especially in the book of Yeshaya, that talk about the Kulam Yedu Elei Yulamdu Edish Yisraelu, Ki Kulam Yedu Esi, everyone will know him. So we have plenty of verses that demonstrate and reflect that that Mashiach comes, there'll be divine revelation, not just the glory, but even the etzem, as I discussed earlier from Vayikra. But what does that mean in simple English? What does that mean to see the divine? Which I think is critical for us to be able to critical for us to address, because there's no way you can prepare for the Geula, as the Rebbe gave us those marching orders, and do anything about it if you don't have a clue what it's going to look like. You can't prepare for something. For example, everything Kedushin is boya hachana. It needs a preparation. Misha Torah be'erev Shabbos, yechel b'Shabbos. The one who works be'erev Shabbos will have for Shabbos. What does that mean? You know what you need for Shabbos. You need certain foods. You may need other things. Since you know what Shabbos is necessary, you know what to do on Friday or on Thursday or all the way back to Sunday. If you don't know what Shabbos is necessary, how could you prepare? So how does one prepare for the Geula? So the Rebbe told us to learn about it, to visualize it, and also to actualize it as much as we can in our personal lives. Famous story with Tzemach Tzedek, that he talked a lot about the Geula, and relative to then it was a lot. They asked, why are you talking about the Geula? It's so far from us, so beyond us. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, due to the aha. What's the aha? So he said, imagine somebody listening to a conversation from behind a wall. You can't hear every word, so you hear random words. You can't make sense of it. Then the two people come out of the room and they share with you what they spoke about. And you say, aha, now I understand this word, that word, because you heard what they talk about. Now you understand those words. So Tzemach Tzedek said, what we have to do today is speak about it. We may not fully comprehend it, but when Moshiach comes, it won't be a completely foreign idea. They say, aha, now I know what means Gili Elokus, because I talked about it, I learned about it, I learned the Chassidus about it. So this is how but the more you get an understanding of what the Geula is going to look like, the more you can then say, okay, let me get at least that state of mind, maybe even emotionally, and maybe even in action. So I want to give two examples of what it will like, and I think it's vital that each of us are able to visualize this. Wherever you live, what will the street look like? Will there be birds? Will people go to work? So two examples that I will give, that's just two of many. One is a letter from the Rebbe, and I don't have it in front of me. I probably quoted it in the past. It's an Igros Chodesh, where the Rebbe is writing to an owner of a dry cleaners of all things. The Rebbe says, everything is divine providence. Since you work in a place of cleaning garments, there has to be a lesson in life. What's the lesson in life? The Rebbe says, you wear a garment, you buy a new garment. You wear it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. After a while, it gets wrinkled, soiled, stained, and at some point, you can't wear it anymore. Or so one would think. No. Comes the concept of cleaner, and what does the cleaner do? You give the garment to cleaners. They submerge it in water. And not just plain water, cold water, but warm water. And then mix it with different chemicals to get rid of the smudges and the stains and all the other blemishes and so on. Then you take it out, and you put it under, you dry it and put it under a heavy press, and voila, you have like a new garment. And you can do this process many times through the life of the garment. What's the nimshal, the moral, the lesson? The lesson is that the neshama shenesata bi tahirihi, the soul you've given me, we say every morning, every one of us, men, women, and children, the soul you give me is pure. Say it every morning. But then life takes over. We need protection. Life breaks people. Life soils us, jades us, and can cause us to have also stains. That's what life is about. So one would think, you know what, it's a one-way street. You can only go from purity to impurity. No, the lesson is you take the neshama and you submerge it in water. Ein mayim elatera. And not just regular water, cold water, warm water. A sign of chayis and pnimius chemimus, vadamkeit. And you mix chemicals into it, and each chemical represents another mitzvah. The mitzvah is clean out the stains. And then you put it under a press, Kabbalah sale, the sense that you are on a mission, you're on a calling, you answer to a higher authority, type of pressure, but good pressure. That creates a refreshed neshama shenesata b'ta'eri, a fresh garment, fresh soul. And you can do this many times through your life, this process. Why am I bringing this example? This is an example of how the world will be when Moshiach comes. There will be cleaners. Why not? At least in the earlier kufis, earlier stages, there'll be cleaners. But you won't see a cleaner simply as I'm giving my garments. A cleaner will be, you'll see, the whole point of cleaning is to show us Molad is Deus Hashem, how this is just another moshel for Elokus, to understand godliness. So today, when we look at everything in our lives, whether it's cleaners, whether it's financial services, whether it's other types of manufacturers or other businesses, every one of them can be seen as an end in itself, or it's a means, in the words of the Rambam, Lo ye'esa kol ha'elam el ladasas Hashem bolvad, which means the entire business of the world, the work of the world will be not materialism as an end in itself to make money and be successful, but as a means to know God. And in the fullest sense, Mola Aris Deus Hashem Kamayim Liyam Achasim, that the divine knowledge will fill the world as the waters cover the sea. So today, when we experience that, when we look at things and see what's the divine message in this, What is the divine providence in this? You are doing a taste of Moshiach as it is in our time today. And the more we do that, the more we prepare the world to be in that place, because our perspectives, our mindsets, and as I said, hopefully our heart sets as well, our emotions, and our actions are guided in that way. The second example I wanted to give was, I once gave a talk at a medical conference. I'm not a doctor, nor the son of a doctor, so what am I doing at a medical conference? They asked me to give a talk about the future of medicine according to Judaism. What will it be like? So I spoke that when Moshiach comes in the future, there will be the eradication of disease and illness and death. Why? And I explained. It's not going to the whole speech. I explained simple. It says in the Torah that because Chetei Tzadas, that's why man died. It says, the day you will eat from it, that you'll die. What's the connection? Because why should a soul and body ever have to separate? A soul is not like, runs out of energy. It's not like an energy plant. It's a divine source of energy. So why can't the soul continue to energize a body forever and ever? The problem is not inside the soul. The problem is inside the body. Think of a cup of water. The water can remain in the cup forever if we're not for evaporation. But if the cup gets severed or in some way punctured, then the water is going to ultimately seep out. By eating from the Eitz Hadas, without going into all the details, they severed the physical world from it being a pure container, a seamless container to the energy within it. So with time, illness, infection, disease would take over and ultimately lead to death. So death is really a result of a punctured physical body and a punctured physical universe that's not fully aligned with its spiritual energy source. In general, and specifically in the human being. When that will be repaired and will fix those punctures, Tikkun Elam will fix it and repair it and refine it, then the two can go on, live forever. So therefore, illness, disease has no place. That was the gist of it. After they finished the talk, one doctor got up, one of the hosts said, beautiful talk, and we really appreciate it. But I want to know, what will we be doing as doctors once Moshiach comes? What happens with all our skills, everything we were trained to do? So after the prerequisite joke, maybe that's why doctors charge so much in order to save for a long retirement, I said, on the contrary, doctors will be doing the most noble thing of all. Instead of having to deal with the pain and suffering of illness and disease and infection and toxins and ultimately death, God forbid, you'll be teaching the rest of the world, from the flesh we behold God, how the human flesh, the human anatomy, human biology, human chemistry, human neurology, the list goes on, teaches us secrets and mysteries of the divine, because we were created in the divine image. Astronomers will do the same through the laws of astronomy. Physics will do the same. Physicists will do it through physics. We will see the Aleph, as the Rebbe explains. You put the Aleph in Gela. In Achrei Meis Kadeshim, the Sikh of Achrei Meis Kadeshim, Toshin and Al, the Rebbe was addressing the question. People are writing to him that they're very afraid that Mashiach is going to come. What will happen with our equity, with our furniture, with everything we built up? So the Rebbe said, nothing to be afraid of. Geula is not diminishing anything. It's Geula with an Aleph. You have everything from Geula, but you'll add the Aleph. Aluf Shalelam, Agdus. That you'll see within everything you have that it's only a means toward a divine expression. This is something each of us can do right now. We're not talking about miracles. We can't bring Tchis HaMesim. We can't rebuild the Beis HaMikdash without God. We can't eradicate Ruch HaTumah min ha'aretz, Aver min ha'aretz. But we can is live lives. Firstly, think and visualize a life of Geula. Live that way as best to our ability. Okay, in addition to that, I want to refer you to episodes 22 and 89. And let's move to the next question. What is the Rebbe's opinion on bariatric surgery and laser surgery? A good Tavach Rab Simon, how are you? I would like to talk with you today about bariatric surgery to make the stomach smaller for diet reasons, and laser surgery for the eyes so that one shouldn't have to wear glasses. I have a relative who did the bariatric surgery, and every time he overeats, he has to vomit. I'm sorry for reading it literally, but that's what he writes here. I think that today, especially our younger generation, don't want to work hard and want everything instantly. So if you want to be thin, you just get the surgery and that's it. I think the whole idea comes from secular culture, and perhaps this is a prohibition of b'chukeisehem lo telechu, meaning not to follow the law, to follow the cultures and the customs of the secular world. As far as I heard from stories of the Rebbe, that the Rebbe's opinion was that surgery should be done only as a last resort. So if you could share what halacha says about this topic and what should be the Rebbe's approach on these surgeries. Moshiach now. Okay, good question. So let me respond. And I did actually speak to more than one Rav about this, just because I don't really speak about halachic issues, but here there's a little overlap of Hashkafa halacha, the Rebbe's position. So number one, there's a letter from the Rebbe dated the 8th of Kislev, Tovshin Mem Gimel. That would be 1982. It's printed in Likutei Sichos, volume 36, page 309. The Rebbe says, Lapella hashayla alistabeich b'nituach. It's a wonder to me, the question that you're asking and struggling whether you should have the surgery about diminishing your stomach, which of course includes, it doesn't say of course, it says the results, the consequences are unclear what that will result and all that will come, that all that it will entail, v'chulu, exclamation point. And the only reason you're doing the surgery is because you are overweight. But the physically overweight, obese, or mufrach, the Rebbe concludes, completely unacceptable, completely should not be done. Mufrach means you should definitely not do it, absolutely, unequivocally not do it. So there you have from the Rebbe. Now you could say that's 1982, and today we live in a different type of surgeries, possible. But we have to also include, there may be other answers. If anybody has answers on this topic, as I ask very often, please send them, and I'll make it public and make sure everybody can hear it. But I would continue and take this a step further. In generally speaking, you see the Rebbe's approach to things is two conditions. Generally speaking, it's only last resort, and only if it's a health threat. To do things for cosmetic purposes, in most cases that I've seen, maybe in all cases, I know there's a letter about earrings, but there it's not surgery, even though it may cause some pain, but the Rebbe speaks about wearing earrings. But as far as surgery goes, if it's just for cosmetic purposes, the Rebbe is always against any type of intrusive factors, because you don't know what other consequences come from it. Not everything's been tested. The same the Rebbe takes his attitude to medication, and we talked about sonograms a while back. And we'll soon talk about eye surgery and laser surgery and contacts and so on. This is pretty much a general principle from the Rebbe, that for cosmetic purposes, why do something like this? You don't know all the consequences. Even not cosmetic purposes, if it's still trial and we don't know all the aspects and consequences as well, the Rebbe is also very hesitant. Now, obviously, if it's pekuach nefesh, you're talking about emergencies, or you're dealing with a health situation and many doctors, and it has already been proven over time. The Rebbe writes that about antibiotics, for example. Then he says it's already been doing, but many do it. The Rebbe goes and says yes. But it's not really based, I would not call this a divine edict from the Rebbe. It's more of a common sense approach based on Torah, that firstly, the human body is God's property. That's why you're not allowed to mutilate yourself. You can't just say, hey, it's my body, I can do whatever I want. It's a holy piece of property. You have to take care of it. So to do things for cosmetic purposes, no, and even for other purposes that may be more than that, it has to be really established. And if not that, that's why it's important to have doctors and have mumchim, rabbonim, and so on. I was also made aware that there is a Tzitz Eliezer, which is a tshuva from one of the achreinim, from later generations, Chelik Ra, volume 11, Siman Memtes, against all type of plastic surgery, because it's a begeder chevel ba'atzmei, meaning self-mutilation, which is interesting as well. But I will say there are other opinions. I do not base on what I'm saying here. I'm just bringing it into the picture here. Ask a qualified rabbi and a mashpia to make sure that anything is being done properly. I'm sharing here what I have the information from the Rebbe. As far as laser surgery, I've not been able to find anything about optic laser surgery, meaning laser surgery they do on eyes, either because it wasn't yet available before Gimel Tammuz, Chav Zayin Adar, or I just didn't see such an answer. But we do have from the Rebbe contact lenses that the maskiris, the number of maskirim, not one, only one, a few secretaries say the Rebbe was very much against. Again, it's intrusive in the sense of placing a lens inside the eye. Some say there are exceptions, whether it's soft lenses, hard lenses. We'll talk about that another time. But if that's the case, laser surgery is even more so. And it is for cosmetic reasons. not for life and death reasons, not for health reasons. So laser surgery is more than just contact. So I would venture to say that would probably be that Rebbe would be hesitant before agreeing and maybe be unequivocally against it as well. But here again, I ask people for giving me any type of information, answers, or kisveyad writings or manuscripts that the Rebbe has on this topic. Okay, with that we shall move forward. Next question. What to tell children about an absentee father? Thank you so much for your weekly webcasts. As a busy mother, I only wish I made more time to listen to your class every week, so I apologize in advance if these issues have been addressed already. I'm a mother of a number of young children, and unfortunately, as it turns out, I have been raising them on my own for the past few years. My youngest child only knows her father as a figure on a screen. We have been separated for over 3 years, and I'm still waiting for a get. Amongst many issues and questions I have, this one is regarding the children. Their father has been living overseas for the last few years and has chosen not to come back to visit the kids at all. He gives his reasons and blames me and my family while claiming he loves the kids and misses them immensely. As a mother, my heart breaks for my kids as I see them clearly suffering a loss of relationship that didn't have to happen as a result of the marriage breakdown. We often discuss Hashem's plan and how we don't understand why people and why Hashem chose them to be born into a situation where their parents' marriage wasn't going to last. They ask me why. Why should they have to feel this pain of having a parent who is Baruch Hashem alive and well, yet has abandoned them in a physical sense? Why does he say he loves them so much and he wishes he could visit them, yet he still chooses to put his own self first and stays across the ocean? I honestly often wish I could transform an abusive and unhealthy marriage just to mend my children's broken hearts. As much as I know they are better off in a healthy and stable home with one parent, I still wish I could fix it and heal our pain and challenges. Do you have any advice for myself to be more at peace with the life I am leading and accepting that this is truly Hashem's will, not my choice? How do I know that this is truly the right thing as a chassid where marriage and a complete home are the ideal? And advice in answering my children when I see them pained as a result of their absentee relationship with their father. Many thanks, and may we only share good news in the future. All the best. Okay, a heart-wrenching letter, but as we do, Chassidus addresses everything. Torah addresses everything, so we also address some of the more painful situations. As always, I have to begin with a disclaimer. I don't know all the details. I don't know all the aspects of this. I don't know the children. I don't know all the circumstances. So therefore, whatever I say is limited, as well as the fact that case by case, every situation is different and has to be addressed in its unique way. But with that said, what we can state in general terms, and these are things that are either directly from letters and approaches that Rebbe takes, or the general common sense based on Torah and Chassidus, and that is that, like any challenging situation, just like I want to compare it, just like if a parent dies prematurely, we still have how do you explain that to children? Why God will allow that? I understand this is a very different situation, but my point is we have many situations that are very difficult to explain. Here, in a way, it's worse because you could say it's not God. It's a human being making a choice. And what will the children come away with? Why would they come away feeling, are we not loved? Is there something? So I believe, however, that in the context of things that we don't have control over, and I'm assuming there's no control over this because it's up to the father, is what a mother can do is provide the children with tools to deal with situations that are not always understandable. That's why I'm comparing it with other tragic situations. That we have to realize there's some things that happen that don't reflect on us, and we have to become stronger people. Basically, things saying like, we're all human beings and we make our mistakes. But that doesn't mean we have to be victims of those mistakes. We grow through them. I would look for excuses. I would not try to make excuses for their father. I would not try to minimize it. Basically, I would say, yes, every person needs a father. And right now, for whatever reason, connect with him online or connect with him and so on. If you could persuade their father to see the children, obviously I would do everything possible to do so. It appears from this letter that there's a healthy relationship. It's not like he's away because of unhealthy reasons, meaning that he's abusive or something like that to the children. But as far as the children go, you can pour love on. You really cannot fill that void. Every child deserves a parent, a father or a mother. And you have to just build that strength in saying we don't understand all the mysteries of why people do things. We just hope that we try to minimize hurting another person. Your father loves you deeply. And the day will come when he will be aware and understand that he needs to come see you. And I really don't have deeper words to say than that, because I'm not going to, again, find excuses, and I'm not going to minimize it. But it's about digging deeper and finding greater strengths. And the fact is, if you take a healthy attitude like that, you can give those strengths to your children. They may not have an answer, and they may always have this wound, but they will have the resilience and the strength that they built from it. The last thing you want is to create bitterness and reinforce bitterness and anger and demoralization. What you want to say, this is, we don't understand, we don't know, but we will become stronger people as a result. Let's do things together. You compensate in every possible way. It'll never fill the void completely, but you do whatever you can healthy, and God helps to bring more health into the picture. When you come, you take an initiative like that, God helps. That's what I have to say. I'm sure there's more to say, but and I wish I could speak about it personally, because I think it would be a lot easier, more compassionate, and more empathetic to be able to speak personally. But since this is the forum, I wanted to share these words. You as a mother, it's also extremely sad, and you have to dig deeper and find greater strengths. I've seen it possible. I've seen people come out of situations like this much stronger. I've seen people come out much weaker. But we have a choice. We have a choice. Remember, the things that we do not control is not up to us. But the things we do control, we can choose to not behave in ways that are just reacting to those negative things that we can't control, which means to build that strength, to focus it, and to keep it going in a positive way. And of course, God should bless you and your children to have that strength, and maybe the father should have yad alav ruch mamorim. They should have the wisdom to understand how he can have a relationship with his children, not the damage done when he's not around, for whatever reason he feels he can't be around. I will also say finally one thing, if it comes to divorce, these are also challenges. What do you tell your children? And that's even when a father does show up. What do you tell your children? But we have to remember another final thing I want to say is that the absenteeism of a parent is reflective of the absenteeism sometimes kaviyachol of God. In a way also, it's like a Baal shaholach medinas hayam. Medrash brings that example, that God and the Jewish people were married at Matan Torah, consummated in the Mishkan, the Beis HaMikdash, as we discussed, and then God went medinas hayam. The Rebbe once, I remember in a sikh, I don't remember exactly which Fabrengen, but the Rebbe was crying and saying, and when finally the Geula comes and the Baal returns, he'll be shocked to see that the Jews, the wife, was still waiting for him, thousands of years later. So you could say this is a mashal that can also be a source of strength, to realize sometimes the father hides from the children, as the famous mashal Chassidus gives. And sometimes the hiding is so deep in order to bring out the greater strengths. And the famous Tu B'Shvat Tov Shalom Etes Fabrengen. And then again, Hashayin Rabba Mem Daled, where the Rebbe spoke, and this child seeks and looks. Zontig gesucht, Montig gesucht, Dienstig gesucht. Sunday he's seeking. Monday he's searching for the Father. Tuesday, how much? What's the Vifel Deshir? The Rebbe said then the expression, Hashayin Rabba, Vifel Deshir. What's the limit to have for your taiven, the Sava Kodesh Baruch? The Rebbe then said, amidst his tears, the only way to explain it perhaps is because God wants us to cry with an emes. And that can only be if it's complete concealment. Let me make it very clear. This is not a justification in any way or form of a father not parenting his children. I'm just saying, what can you teach your children, what to learn from it? We have this situation collectively. And that can only help us build the strengths and do what we have to do. Okay. Next question is lost opportunities. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, your classes have helped me very much, but one thing I can't seem to resolve. Just to go back, the episode 65 and 66 actually addressed the issue of divorce and how to deal with that with children. So that's a good cross-reference for that topic. Okay, back, lost opportunities. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, your classes have helped me very much, very, very much. But one thing I can't seem to resolve is what I'm writing to you about, in hopes that you might address the subject with your signature compassion, intelligence, and care. It's possible that others may share my feelings, and what would be even better would be if someone could be spared my experience. I came of age in the late 60s and 70s amidst all that social upheaval. In addition to the external turmoil, my parents divorced and our family crumbled apart. Without parental supervision or guidance, I drifted along on the waves of the times. I won't go into detail since you remember the popular culture of those days. It was a free-for-all, non-stop party. When the party ended, I discovered real life had passed me by. Fast forward to today. Somehow through God's kindness, I found Chabad and Chassidus. I study, learn, go to shul, keep Shabbos, do mitzvahs. Baruch Hashem, I have been given a second chance to have children in my life by helping at the Gan preschool and by teaching Yiddishkeit to those whose paths cross mine. So what is the problem? I have this deep sadness about my misspent youth, about my lost opportunities. I feel heartbroken when I am surrounded by families in shul. I am angry that the culture by which I was completely influenced was anti-marriage and anti-children. I see parents help guide their young sons and daughters into beautiful lifelong love, and I am filled with regret. I see myself in the young mothers, the mother I could have and should have been if everything had been completely different. If you could talk about this, maybe you could help others. As one ages, one looks back. Hindsight is 20/20, they say. It's not easy to transition from middle age to whatever 62 is, especially if you're part of that endless youth generation. I'm grateful for my Chabad family, or I would be truly alone. Thank you for all you do and give. Shalom. Well, the key thing to know is nothing is ever lost. We do not, as Jews, believe in loss. We believe that some opportunities just take on different shapes. And when one thing is perhaps lost, something else comes to replace it. This is true in physical handicaps, it's true in spiritual, it's true in life situations. Some people, God forbid, God did not bless them the ability to have children. Some people, God did not bless them with other opportunities. But for everything taken, something else is given. Because a good God will not deprive people from fulfilling their mission and calling. Will we ever understand why the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin had no children? No. But what did the Rebbe do? He created more children than anyone else has. Amalamed is ben chavere, kilu yolde. All the children. Educating people, transforming them. Is that a compensation? Called compensation. But you do not become, as I spoke to the previous questioner, we don't become demoralized, and we're not victims of circumstances. So I'm not going to go ahead and say to you, no, the opportunities were not lost. Yes, that opportunity was lost, but you are not lost. You're not defined by your things that happen to you in your life. That's the bottom line. Because as I said before, neshama shenasata bi tahirihi. Always remember, we must always remember that. Now I know it's easy for me to talk because I'm not in your shoes, but we all have things that we did not necessarily were able to zeich or merit to get. So you have to look at what you have, and remember your spirit always remains divine. You have tremendous things to give. Will there always be a wound, a vacuum, a void due to something? Perhaps. But you can fill the void with many other good things. And that has to be the focus. So I am not going to go into the mysteries of God's ways, why you were born into such a family and such a culture, and why someone else was born in a family where they younger realize what the purpose is and be able to get married and have children and do everything you so feel you've missed. I don't know the answer to that. It's God's ways. Why did he put one child in a family like that and one child in a family like that? We don't know. But one thing we know, everyone has tremendous opportunities. And that may come sometimes, yes, some things that we feel that sad about. But not sad is not depressed, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. Sad is a motivator. It means, okay, let me do what I can to see what other skills and resources I have that I'm not using. And maybe that void actually reveals to you strengths that you would never ever reveal had you had that blessing. That's how we have to think. And that's an attitude that you have to be around people who think that way, and you have to have that same attitude, and that's why we learn Chassidus, and we learn about what God wants of us, and we learn about our soul, and we learn about there's always more opportunities. Everybody in life has suffered in some way. But there's always more opportunities, and you have to diversify. You have to have your eggs in more than one basket. As the Vayikra Rebbe said with the gun pointed to his head, that this toy can frighten someone that has one world and many gods, but not someone who has one God and many worlds or two worlds. We have many worlds. One thing is missing, we have something else. And that does not, again, explain it, but it means that's how our mindset is. That's how we think and that's how we feel. My heart goes out to you. My heart goes out to anyone that has these type of challenges. I feel honored and humbled to be able to be a platform to read this. I really actually am not just saddened by the story, but feel almost like in awe that people share their sacred spaces in this fashion. And I really think this platform, to be able to take Chassidus and not always find an answer, but find direction and guidance, how to navigate, is itself an unbelievable force and power. And that's what we Jews have done for thousands of years collectively and individually. Find people that are empowering, find projects and activities that feed your soul, that nourish you, that are aligned with your talents. I see you do some things of that nature, but even more so, and just become overwhelmed in a positive way with a surge and a flood of good activities that just keep your mind in a place of positive stuff, so there's not much time to think about that which is negative. And that you find in many answers from the Rebbe. Okay, there's a bunch of follow-ups. I see time, usually time is our, I don't want to say our enemy, time is our challenge. But I will read one or two follow-ups and then I'll do the Chassidus question. So firstly, home birthing. Let's start with home birthing because I addressed it last week, episode 204. And I spoke about, does anybody have, I said I didn't find an answer from directives from the Rebbe, so two things were given to me in my direction. Let's start with the first thing. First thing is in Tafshin Mem Zayin, in a Siche, when Yutas Kiss of Tafshin Mem Zayin, Muge, edited by the Rebbe, printed in Sefer HaSiches Tafshin Mem Zayin, page 146. The Rebbe speaks there about how an earlier generation, about Shir HaMailis, that after children are born, you put up Shir HaMailis and different kameas and different letters and different things we post for the brachas and to create Kedusha around the child. So the Rebbe says in earlier generations, children were born at home, so it was done right away. Today, this is the Rebbe's words, in the early generations, women would give birth in their homes with the help of a midwife. And therefore everybody did this custom right away when the birth was born, because they were home. But today, for health reasons, women give birth in Beis Arafua, meaning in hospitals, dafke. But sometimes they wait to put up the Shir HaMailis till they get home, and they don't realize they should do it right away. And the Rebbe goes on to encourage that it should be done, and the doctors will agree, and the hospital will agree, especially it will help the spirit of the mother and the child, and so on. You could look up the Sicha. But here clearly the Rebbe says, Mesibus Refuyas, and B'meila this has then the Heiros Atera, Rapi Mekan. From here we learn that you listen to with the permission for a Reifel Rapis, so you follow the doctors, and doctors saying to give birth in the hospital. The Rebbe, of course, the Beis Refuah was the Rebbe's unique thing, not to call it Beis Chelim. It's another discussion. That's there. But does this mean that you can't give birth at home? No. He's saying the minute it became B'yamanei Mesibus Refuahs for health reasons. It's not a psak, it's not definite. As a matter of fact, and this is the second note came my way, there was a Rav in Sfas, Olav Shalom, who gave out a directive that you're not for the women in his community that they can't give birth, they can't home birth. And later he heard that the Rebbe did permit it in different situations, given situations. So he asked the Rebbe what to do now. It's a long answer. If you want to get it, please email us at meaningfullife.com/mylife. In the form, give us your email address. I'll send you a copy of the answer, even the manuscript of the Rebbe's writing. It's a long answer. I'm not going to read the whole answer, what to do in a situation. The Rebbe talks once you already gave the Isser. But at the end, the Rebbe says, in New York, many Yeldas, many people give birth at home, and with the agreement, Heskem HaRabbanim, meaning the Rabbanim have agreed to it. The Rebbe says, from your letter, it appears there may be a difference in conditions in your city. Aval Kaposhet, only somebody on site can make the determination. So here clearly the Rebbe is like, you could see leaning against making an Isser because it's done. But then he goes on how to exactly he should deal with it. Essentially, the Rebbe is not going to give a psak, but you see from this that it's not forbidden. And the Rebbe was not against forbidding it. If it's a doctor says you should give birth, in other words, let's say there's a certain circumstances that a doctor says, that the child is at risk, or other given situations, God forbid. Clearly, why risk more and stay at home? But if a condition is that there's not risk like that, and doctors and a Rav says it's fine, so he would say it's possible. Again, I'm not reading more than I want to read. I'm giving you the sources so you can make the determination. That's all I can say and add to this discussion. Okay. And the person who sent me this, one of them wrote, "Hello, Rabbi Jacobson, and thank you for your wonderful lectures and articles. I'm sure you know that many people, including some in our family, enjoy them and benefit from them tremendously. You asked for any letters of the Rebbe on the topic of home birth. Here's one. I have more details about it if you want." And I was sent this. Maybe I will find out more details and I'll share with you. There are other follow-up questions, but due to the time, I will just talk about a few, let me see. I'll take two more and then I'll go to the Chassidus question. There was, of course, continued discussion about the topic that we addressed in episodes 202, 203, and 204 about shaming someone for their crimes. But I think I really exhausted the topic pretty extensively. You can go back and listen to it. I think all the angles were covered, and just wanted to make that point. And if we have to address it again, hopefully we don't have to address it because it will be completely eradicated from this world. We will. But right now, there's nothing really more for me to add, and I don't want to get into any type of polemics about it. So with that will suffice. And let us now go to one more question, which was one I wanted to already address a number of times, but again, due to time. So here, the question was God's goodness. Follow up to the Chassidus question of episodes 201 and 202. How do we know that when good is happening in our life, that is good from God's graciousness and kindness, or as discussed in Tanya, about God giving the wicked good in this world as a way of cashing out their merits so they don't get rewarded in the world to come? Thanks for explaining the previous questions so eloquently. Okay, so this is, you can say, a type of supplement to what we discussed already, different angles about God's goodness, which I discussed why we pray for God's goodness, even though the Alter Rebbe explains that sometimes in the negative, there's even chsadim nelamim, chsadim nestarim, hidden kindness, and different angles of this. This is a question, another detail, which I don't believe I addressed, and I'll address it now, and that is, how do we know, like it says in some places, that sometimes you get good in Elam Hazeh, so God so-called pays the Rishayim, so the Elam Haba they don't have to get it. Maybe that's the good. Every Jew is considered to be innocent until proven guilty. So to go ahead and a person can't go ahead and say, you know what, I'm a wicked person and maybe I'm getting goodness in this world in order not to get. So that's the first thing. Our attitude has to be, if you're getting goodness in this world, it's because you deserve it. And it's a blessing. And goodness sometimes is also a reward. It's not just a type of preparing you for punishment. As the Rambam explains, goodness in this life, health, parnasa, peace of mind, helps us serve God in peace. So that's what we have to assume. The determination if somebody's getting good because they're Rosh, I believe, is not in our domain. That's up to God. We're told about it to understand sometimes. The question when you see Lama Derech Rishayim Tzleicha, why do you see that the path of wicked people is successful? Why the good? Why the wicked prosper? So that's one of the explanations. But to go apply that to ourselves or to anyone who's being blessed and say maybe the blessing is coming, that's not our approach. So there is the element where sometimes you'll see a wicked person being given some gifts for that short period of time, in other words, to fulfill that, whatever they deserve. But it's not something I believe we have the ability to go ahead and determine in each case. So we can just assume this. When there's good, it's good that you deserve, enjoy it, don't take it for granted, and be humble, be humbled by all the kindness, and use every goodness to be able to show God that you deserve it and you earned it by saying that I'm not taking it for granted and feel entitled, but I will use it to be able to add, increase in serving God, Torah, mitzvahs, spreading Yiddishkeit, spreading Chassidus, and God will see that. He'll only give you with more blessings and more goodness. When it comes to Elam Haba, both in the Gan Eden and in L'Asad Love, in Moshiach's coming, there'll be even more goodness for everybody, going to go around ad bli dai, without any limits. Okay. There were a few more follow-ups, but I will address those next week. That's about 1, 2, 3. 3 more follow-ups. Let me address the Chassidus question now. Is the world of thought more real than the world of action? A person is found in the place where his thoughts are. It's a very strong statement. When you think about something, it's as if you're there. Hi, Reb Simon. Thank you for your time yesterday in answering some of my questions. It's someone I met in Shul. I had asked you about the concept that a person is found in the place where his thoughts are. The question was a bit deeper, as were some of my other questions. Here's what I was asking. Is it safe to assume that the world of machshava, the world of thought, is more real than the world of maisa, action, based on the following? The Rambam says in Nevuchim, in the Guide for the Perplexed, that the Malachim didn't visit Avram in this world, the angels didn't visit Abraham in this world, but in another world, in a world that's more real than ours. It's like in a spiritual realm. We know from Chassidus that many Agadah to Gemaras, many of the Agadah, which is like the legends, the Agada, the stories in the Gemara, are stories that exist in other parts of Seder Shtalshus and other parts of the cosmic order, but many do not exist in our physical world. They're like basically metaphors. Again, it doesn't mean the stories aren't real. They could perhaps be more real than the reality we think we know on those levels. This is similar to the examples Mishlei Shlema, King Solomon's metaphors, that the deeper the layer you go, example, honey versus sweet niggin versus a sweet seichel, the more refined the concept is. After all, the higher you go in Ein Sof, the divine infinite light, the closer you get to the ultimate truth. We know that Shemoneh Esrei, which is Amida, we do quietly, because the world of Malachim, the world of angels, and Elam Emes, and the world of truth, doesn't consist of expression in words and in action. Everything operates in thought in the next world. Even more so, as you go from one level in the cosmic order to the next, it's considered that like thought compared to speech. In other words, the higher the level, the more thought compared to speech, which is more expressive to the world below it. To sum up, the more edel something is, the more refined something is, the more it represents truth. Digital information may be more real than a physical item. Or some may say that atoms are purely just that, digital info. Everything was done b'chachma, with wisdom of God. Kulam b'chachma sisa. So would that mean that even though I'm sitting in my home now, typing this email, but since I'm thinking about our conversation from Shabbos, I'm more in 770 than in my home? I understand on a physical level it is not so, but my question is, what is more real? We know our world is complete sheker, false. And we're being deceived every second by the shell of klipa, by the shell of the husks. This has recently been confirmed by science with the veiled truth theory. It's impossible to know all the moving pieces since there's an infinite amount of missing blocks that we can never know about. Would you say that by Matan Torah, God showed us the real reality, and that's why Parcha Nishmos, and that's why their souls expired? Thanks. I understand that our world could be made more real than all the other worlds because of Dir B'Tachtenim, God wanting to have a home in this world, and by doing a mitzvah and learning Torah, you have God Himself. So Yesh HaNivra converts back to Yesh HaAmiti, meaning the physical reality converts back to the ultimate reality. Okay, very good question. My response is quite direct and simple. When you talk about reality, it's a very big question. What is reality? God, we know, is the ultimate reality, and this world is a created reality. So clearly, sometimes it's not because we see it with our eyes and ears and taste, touch, and smell, meaning our senses, that make something real. There are many things we don't experience with our senses. So when you say reality, depending what you mean by reality. If you're talking about reality based on senses, you have to define the tools. The tools of the senses, reality is what it sees, hears, tastes, touches, and smells. The reality of the mind, it relates to the reality of ideas. The reality of the heart relates to the emotions, to love, things that are not tangible and are not sensory. You talk about the reality of Atzilus, then you need spiritual tools. The reality of Elikus and higher levels, you need even more spiritual ones. It all comes down to a microscope can see what it can see, but it cannot see and experience something which is beyond those tools and instruments. When you talk about ultimate reality, yes, the higher the level, the more real it is, and the way the more concealed, the less real it is. But here's a key point. Bereshis bara Elokim is a Shemayim v'Sa'aretz. Chassidus asked the question, how do we know existence is real and not an illusion? And it gives two proofs. One of them is because the Torah says so. Bereshis bara Elokim, God said He created the world. The second reason is with Chassidus Anaim, because there's a halacha, the difference between magic and real kishuf, that you can actually change something in reality. If everything is an illusion, it's all illusion, it's all an illusionist, it's all magic. The point is that God gives reality. In that sense, this physical world, like you pointed out, is real because God wants it to be real. Is there such a thing as dimyanis? Illusions? Yes, nisyanis, as a dimyan. Avram Avinu saw water and there was no real water there. But besides those, there's reality is reality. Who defines reality? It's God defines reality. What is the ultimate reality? Amitis amitzias, in the language of the Rambam, amitis imotze. An existence that's mitzius imatzmuse, that must exist, not optional. An existence that, so to speak, comes from its own self. Its justification is because it is what it is. Eya. That's the ultimate reality. Everything else is optional. The world didn't have to exist, so Chassidus says it's not real in that sense, but it's real because God put it here. So God gives it that reality. So I don't know, really, it's really a matter of apples and oranges. To say thought is more real than action, Yes, in a certain way, it has power. But to say that action doesn't have reality, in the world of action, action is more important. You can't think about a mitzvah. You have to do the mitzvah. On the other hand, machshava has a reality because it shapes and defines how action will be done. So I really think it's just a matter of defining what reality is. You can look in the Hemshech Tzadik Daled from the Frierdiker Rebbe. It's printed in Sefer Maimorim Tavshin Yud Aleph, where he talks at length about this. What is reality? Emes, the Sfas Emes, Emes Lamite, and the reality of the physical, the reality of the spiritual. Bottom line is that the ultimate reality is only Elokus, Mamash, Atzmus. Ambitis HaMetzias, we call it. Sometimes Mechuyev HaMetzias, must be. Metziusim Atzmusei. Metzias, as the Alter Rebbe says in Simon Chaf and Ageres HaKodesh, Metziusi that comes from within itself. Meaning nothing else puts it there. It itself justifies itself. And then Mitzvah is built to Mitzvah Nimtza, another expression used, a non-existential existence. That's ultimate reality. But that doesn't mean God did not create other dimensions, because ultimate reality is not just defined and limited to that, just like Kashem Sheyeshle, the power to create Bligvul, just like God can create infinite, He can create finite. And the finite is a true reality as well. Obviously, the goal is to unite them all together, where reality, all the realities become meshed together, and we can experience it on many multidimensional ways. Okay, with that, let me conclude. This has been MyLife Chassidus Applied, episode 205. Again, dedicated in honor of Breina Bas Chana. Please partner with us and help us continue this and make it expand through your sponsorships by going to meaningfullife.com/sponsorship. Everyone should have a Freilich and Chodesh Nissan. As the month comes up, a Chodesh HaGeula, B'Nissan Niglu, B'Nissan Asin Ligoel. I will see you next Sunday, every Sunday, 8 to 9 p.m. Have a blessed week.